Salam for the background report, and our guest will be coming now. Claire?
Yes, okay.
Yes.
All right, let's, of course, begin with the introductions. And we have here in the studio Professor Oke Ikechukwu, who is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have here with us Dr. Goke Adegoroye, who, of course, was former permanent secretary, of course, and he was pioneer DG permanent secretary, Bureau of Public Service Reforms. He was also former director and head of think tank team, the SGF in 2004. He was a DG of Federal Environmental Protection Agency. Too many positions that for Dr. Adegoroye.
Yes, and we also have in the studio this morning they're all regulars on the program, actually, Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy at Adamawa State University. It's a pleasure to see you in 2024.
Just 1 year ago.
I've not seen you in a long time.
The last time I saw you was 1 year ago.
It was 1 year ago, exactly. Yes, so and we also have another guest joining us. In a moment, we'll be able to introduce her. Claire.
All right, so you know what the topic is. We started this conversation yesterday. It's of course, the directive to slash, if you may, depending on your choice of verb now, by the federal government, on the number of officials, to accompany Mr. President and other political leaders during the travels outside and within Nigeria. We started this conversation yesterday. Today we are having an in-depth conversation on this topic, and we have all our guests here. And fortunately, we also have a female, that will be joining us. But let's start with the former permanent secretary, Dr. Goke Adegoroye. For you, we have a lot of people have, expressed their opinions about what Mr. President did. Of course, some are commending, others are, a bit on the fence. But most importantly, opposition parties have come to say, okay, this is a good step. What are your views? How do you evaluate this directive?
I also will commence by commending the president for being responsive and trying to save us from this kind of situation. But having said that, there are some issues also we will need to interrogate. The fact that the president has to be the one to do this after we've got all this embarrassment internationally speaks of the collapse of laid down procedures and guidelines. We must remember that the president and the vice president were sworn in, not into a vacuum, but into a system that already has bureaucratic support in place. So there is a transition process, and it is expected that in that transition, they will be able to be briefed and be guided by the bureaucratic support. That's the whole essence of transition, and why you call permanent secretaries permanent. Permanent because they don't really have to be offloaded with the administration. But in this case, what do we have? This is not the first time that a president will come and make this kind of announcement. I remember the first time in the Fourth Republic was actually at my initiative. I remember you said I was head think tank to the secretary to the government. In 2001, Ambassador Apata, the deputy permanent rep of Nigeria to the United Nations, gave me a report of an embarrassing situation where Nigeria was invited to a meeting in observer status. And we had, literally almost 100 of people arriving there.
Just for observer status?
Observer status, where you are only supposed to have only 2 seats. And I took it up. At that time, the SGF Ekaito was not even in. It was David Oyegun was acting. And Hakim Baba Ahmed was permanent secretary political. So the three of us took it down, up and we wrote a memo to the president on it. And President Obasanjo now also took a decision and, spell out. And that was actually the reason why you had some twin circulars at that time about delegations to international meetings.
Give us an insight into what the guidelines were.
The guidelines actually really cut it down so drastically, and some of these have been covered in my book. So I'm also coming to that these things are not new. The guidelines are there. I spoke about this in my book. I made those books available, not just to the political parties when they were campaigning, but even after the APC government won. The key people there had my books on their desk, including any official, SGF or whatever. So you will expect that there are things here to guide us. So the question you want to then ask is it that those people who are not actually being responsive, guiding, showing the president that this is the protocol for this kind of thing? So if it has happened now. But having said that, let me also say that the real issue also is with the implementation. In all of those years, even when those things were done, you still find a breach. In my statement at the Independence Day lecture, you remember some of the things I said. I had to be a bit prescriptive. I became prescriptive because I was being pained by all the efforts that we've made, whether subterranean or publicly, in presentations and in books that are not being implemented. And that is why I made some of those statements that I made. So the question...
I think we should just put you on hold.
Put you on hold now so that we can bring in the other guests. That is your opening statement, and I think it's making a lot of sense, because reducing the cost of governance is a challenge that has been, staring Nigerians in the face, and Nigerians have sort of advocated for it. Different governments have come up with it, that they must reduce the cost of government. But what Nigerians are saying, yes, we agree that the cost of travel, this thing has been reduced, and we felt the body language of the president during the UN, United Nations Congress, when people were going, said they should stop the issuance of visa for people who are not supposed to be there. Now, the body language is also saying this is a step-by-step initiation. He's initiating something that will affect and encourage Nigerians to believe in governance, democratic governance in Nigeria. And some Nigerians still have a little bit of concern that it might not come true because so many, governments have talked about it, and we can't rule out the elephant in the room, corruption. Let's bring in Professor.
Well, the elephant in the room and the size of the room, they are two different things.
Yes.
When an elephant is too big, is occupying too much space, you don't push it, you shoot it.
Yes.
It will die, and you shoot the head. This, I think, is what they're trying to do. Let's disaggregate the issues. Everybody was outraged at the number. Now there's a response, so that's positive. Number two, 60% reduction, that's really significant, and coming as a directive, not as a memo, quiet memo. Thirdly, you see that in all of this, there's a pretense that there's no machinery of government. If there's an event that's about to take place, statutorily, there are people who should be present. Ministry of Transport, there's an international conference on road transport, there's director of road transport in the ministry. Besides him, who else should go? Somebody else who can take notes. But you send 19 people from the ministry, in addition to people from the presidency, under the senior special assistant on transport. So the purpose is not to go for a conference, but to go for, a DTA, the dollar thing. And abuse has become institutionalized, so that those who ought to come and say, Honorable Minister, sorry, this can't go. They're no longer on the job, they're on the take instead. If you take the minister, for instance, who has landed herself in trouble, that shouldn't have happened. Today is how we are talking about, but there's a permanent secretary, there is a procurement unit in the ministry, there's transparency monitoring unit, there is Servicom, which has been escaping proper scrutiny, because if anything is going on anywhere, it's Servicom that should say, Mr. President, this money that was spent on the rail is the right amount, is delivering this value. Now, everybody, director of everybody, they may question them, ceremonially. The machinery that made that memo to go, everybody in the line of fire should be called up. then you're dealing with corruption, not isolating an individual. Yes, you could notice a lot of presumption. Recall that there was a ministerial retreat for all the ministers. A ministerial retreat, it had a lot of content, but a lot of people think it's motivational talk. The purpose of such a retreat is for each minister to walk away with a template on how to function.
Precisely. Because
he's walking into a system where the permanent secretary is the administrative head and chief accounting officer. The minister is ceremonial, and it's to him that the PAMSEC sends memos for approval. So the memo that has landed this minister in trouble, to begin with, shouldn't have originated where it came from. Should have come through to PAMSEC, who will then minute audit, will say go ahead. All of these, everybody is sitting around. And then you look at it also, you see that it's building on the presumption that had overtaken the system. Adegroye's book, which I have and which I've read, suffers a major disadvantage. He's thrown into an environment where nobody reads. And therefore, that book should have been one of the major modules of the ministerial retreat. That's the kind of thing that should regularly and routinely be made available to the public by way of a presentation. Does it
even come as a surprise? In fact, for me, I'm surprised that there is actually a guideline.
Yes, a guideline on that.
By somebody who had been through the system, who was involved in civil service reforms. Now, the point is that once you mention a book, I've been made a minister, I'm a public figure, I'm driving about in Cyrene, you expect me to be reading a book. Oh, thank you, sir, that book is very wonderful. He doesn't know the title. So, when you detect the flaws and defects in your environment, particularly demographic defects, you address it. Your child doesn't like eating, so you joke with the child and gist and be feeding the child. That's what it has come to. That should be made a presentation, permanently a module. Now, back to the matter of the reduction in cost. I believe that it has to be instrumental. First of all, this is a very positive one with visible impact. Imagine, take the cost of the last trip. Take away 60% of that cost. That is something.
The COP28.
Yes. Now,
the alleged 2 billion naira spent, we don't know how much really.
Yeah, it's likely to be more. Because there are other matters arising from the official expense. Now, you take that out. The next thing I hope the president will begin to look at is the convoy of public officers, including his own. You see, one element we must note, and this experience brings to bear on this. Once you're on top, your dependency is 100%, your vulnerability is 100%, the possibility of your being misrepresented and misunderstood is 100. I'll cite one example and end there. He's president. He knows he's going on a trip. Every other person who ought to protect him went into a jamboree. He suffered the embarrassment. I was just saying to Minister of Transport, we went from here to Lagos for an event. You know, when you go, the thing is booked by either NPA, NIMASA, or one or the others. Then it was NMA, Nigerian National Maritime Authority. So we had the Sheraton. By the next day, we had built up a laundry bill of 103,000. This was in the year 2000. I hadn't washed a handkerchief, whether by myself, in which they are charging for water, or sent it to laundry. We had a bill of 1. Because I took time to monitor that. I called them. What was going on? Now, staff from the various ministries, once the minister checks in, they come run their bill. From the restaurant, we had a bill of nearly 60,000 for one night. And then the buffet was 5,000, and I didn't eat, and the minister didn't eat. So, when you're in office and you have aides who are carrying laptops and calling themselves reformers and saying civil servants don't know anything, you're finished. Because they will run bills under your name, and all of that will go on. So in this instance, 3 things, and I'll end on that. The president has taken a good decision. Those around any person, not just the president who holds office, minister, DG, whatever, if they are not competent, let them find a friend in the civil service in that institution. That would be their greatest protection. But this attitude that, oh, civil servants, they're useless, we've come here to reform and teach them because you have a degree, you're used to making speeches, you've never run an office, you never treated a file, but you're better. And they will just watch you bury yourself, which would also happen to the minister.
All right, Professor Ikechukwu, thank you. And just to cap, you gave an analogy of the big elephant without stoking emotions of wildlife conservatives.
No,
I'm
no,
sure
no,
that
no,
is
no.
figuratively used, so that they don't hold
That's a
us.
metaphorical expression,
exactly.
actually.
So we need to clear that. So thank you, Prof. I know that. Let's quickly introduce the guests who joined in while the conversation was going on. Suwaiba.
Mohammed Dankabo.
Thank God you are just beside me.
She's Mrs. Suwaiba Mohammed Dankabo, a Deputy Country Director and Director of Programs Action Aid Nigeria. You're welcome. It's nice to have another woman join us. We are equal now, 50-50.
All right, let's bring in let's bring in Honorable Ahmad Sajo. I'm sure you have a different experience, as a commissioner, former commissioner, with the civil service. But first of all, are you surprised that there was actually a guideline, specifically on travel, procedures, and maybe the size, of the entourage?
Yeah, there has always been a guideline. But you see, the core problem we're facing in this country is the mindset of the leadership. The leadership in this country is always about entitlements, not about duty, not about responsibility. So once you couple up a leadership in Nigeria, the first thing the leadership would be looking out for are the entitlements. And it's because of this entitlement mentality that the ruling elite, both in office and out of office, thinks only of the glamour of life itself. It's beyond just cutting travel cost. I think the president should go the whole hog and begin to entrench a regime of, thinking that is different from what we are seeing. When you think that it is your entitlement as a minister, for example, to move with a loud convoy and harass people on the street to show that you have arrived, now you are in power. These are some of the things. Cutting the expenses by 60% is huge, is massive. And I hope and I pray that the president will also ensure that it is implemented as intended, because we have reached a season in our lives where even the civil service you're talking about is operated now by blackmails. You are in leadership position, you are a minister, or you are even a permanent secretary. You must have either signed a document that was out of line a little. Somebody down the line there will pick up that document and come and tell you, look, I'll put this on social media if you do not do this. These things are happening, we know. This is a different level of corruption, blackmailing of officials. That's why you see memos flying, in public space. In the past, I know that there is what we used to call file movement. You know how a memo moves within the ministry, and when it is leaked, you can easily trace where it's leaked. My brother here knows that they had a system as permanent secretaries that controls file movement, document movement, but those systems are no longer working. When I arrived my office as a commissioner, the first thing I did was to call the permanent secretary and say, look, my friends, I met you here. And as you pull this seat for me to sit down, I will tell you that somebody took off from that seat. And I'm going to leave that seat tomorrow for some other person. Please guide me. And I was guided. And I must respect the fact that immediately I said, guide me. The director, the civil servants and the director said, look, now we have somebody that respects us. And it was on the basis of this mutual respect we worked throughout my tenure. So what the Prof is saying is key. There has to be some level of mutual respect. The leadership must respect the people that are met there. Even after you must have left office, you're going to leave your footprints. It depends on what the people you are leaving behind do with those footprints. They can either use them against you, or they can amplify some of the wrong actions you did, or hide some of the good things you did. So it's for you to earn respect by also according them respect. That's number one. Number two, what the president has done now tells us that he listens. He listens. A lot of Nigerians are really, really concerned about not just the delegations, but even the convoys internally, the number of people that accompany and then push people away. These people that we've elected will return, no? They will return and seek people's support in the future. If you antagonize the people because you're working with them now, you're not doing them a favor. Like Professor said, people who are supposed to protect public officials are the ones that are actually exposing public officials. So, in a nutshell, what I am trying to say is that for us, this is just a beginning. I think, it should go beyond just cutting delegations. It should go, the whole hog, including the manner that public officials, display themselves within the public space.
Yes.
We're calling on people to make sacrifices. If they see us displaying dollars and playing and throwing money at parties, we are not convincing them that there's a need for any sacrifice. When we walk around and behave in a manner that shows that we don't feel the pain. The president spoke to Nigerians on the 1st of January, said he's aware that there are definitely some pain we're going through. And then if that pain is not shared, it doesn't give me confidence that when prosperity comes, it will be shared.
Of course. on that, Mr. Ahmed, I'll pause you there so that we can bring in Sueba Mohammed Ankabo, Deputy Country Director and Director Programs Action Aid. They say democracy is one of the most expensive systems of government in the world. And we've seen countries like Singapore, Rwanda, New Zealand, Denmark, and so on cut down the cost of governance, and it has really worked for their economy. You're working for an international organization, and I'm sure you must have been on so many trips, maybe attending so many seminars around the world, and you must have seen the way that our travels with our government officials travels on a very, very high budget. How do you think reducing the cost of governance, which Sajua says should go beyond just cutting travels and cutting a lot of things? Professor has indicated maybe the convoy and all that. How do you think it will help the Nigerian economy, just as it has helped other countries like Singapore, Rwanda? We see how Rwanda is coming up beautifully. Cutting the cost of governance is the way they say for the new, administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Let's have your take on that.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. And I want to say that we appreciate the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has touched the tip of the iceberg, because reducing the cost of governance has a lot of work to do beyond just the one aspect that he has touched on. Because the convoy, let me start with the fact that the president, if we can recall a few years back, has the largest convoy if I can say, in the world, beyond the Queen of England, for instance, if traveling. And so when we see the number of people travel to COP 2023, everybody was alarmed. Because seeing 400 people going there, it tells you that there's no accountable system that is working, that asks people, if you are involved in a particular activity, what is the purpose? What is the expected outcome? What is the result? In our system, we plan, we engage based on the expectation of certain results. So if everybody who is going to be involved in anything, in fact, coming to the government, the first motivation is to understand that you are taking a social contract. Social contract to deliver for the people, because we are paid to do that. and the government takes responsibility for all your household and everything that you are supposed to do. So the convoy is one aspect of it. So, like the question you asked is, how will that, increase or make a difference for the country? Is the comparison between the cost of governance and the capital expenditure, which is supposed to go for the people. We have experienced in 2023 40% overhead. That is the overhead in terms of the cost of governance. 40% is the 2023, and then we are here also 40% 2024. This current budget.
So the recurrent expenditure overweighs the capital expenditure.
Almost 40%, almost going to 50%. Yeah. Because now, so if you are running a business, you are trying to see that you use less to get more. So let's use this yardstick to measure the services that we get from government. If government is supposed to serve the people, and then you are using almost 50% of the amount that you are going to use to provide services for the people in the implementation, then definitely something is wrong. Where is the accountability system? We all ask here whether there was a guideline, or there is a guideline or protocol. There are two different things. Guideline could exist. Compliance is a different thing. It depends on the people. When you are appointed in a service of government, and the first thing to ask is, what am I supposed to do? What is my responsibility? What do I need to achieve that? How much am I going to invest? And if you follow closely what we have been looking at in the last 5 years, the budget has been very, very close, but you always see an increase in the area of the recurrent expenditure. But the capital, we are always struggling to see how much goes for education, how much goes for water, how much goes for those things that serve the poor. In the last year, 133 million Nigerians are still hanging, in the poverty, experiencing multi-dimensional poverty. How do we deal with that number? Carrying 150 people around, just following one person. The same thing applies in the policing system. 10 policemen are following one individual, securing only one person. Meanwhile, millions of Nigerians are there without security. We are seeing increase in the securities, Another area that is also a problem, which if this cost of governance will also help, we'll expect to see an increase in the security system that will help the people. However, even the security vote is a problem, because most of the amount that goes in there, they are not accounted for. So if we bring a system of reform and we expect it to work, we have to surround it with accountability system. Ask critical questions, demand accountability from those in government to say, how much have you spent, what is the result? If we don't ask for result, if we don't monitor our implementation processes, our procurement systems, because these are all the loopholes, the lacunas that people are using to shy away from the books that the Public Secretary has written to use. There has been always a practice. Travel is like a glamour. It's like an incentive. People see it as an incentive. If you ask me to travel now, I am thinking of how I'm going to manage my work, because it's like, for me, it's like carrying my table to the other country, because you go there and you're working. And I've experienced several trips where you go from the country, from Nigeria to the airport, to the meeting hall, from the meeting hall to the airport, back to Nigeria, without seeing any other place. We have people that have gone to conferences like Beijing conference, embarrassing moment.
Without attending the conference.
We will see people are in the markets.
Yes.
Shopping spree.
Shopping.
It's time for shopping. It's time for holiday.
That's why I'm saying that if we compare what we are doing, the tax ahead, when you are assigned a responsibility and you are given an accountability system, you are traveling, what is your purpose? When you come back, what is the result?
I will come back to you to give us an idea of maybe framework for, selecting those that are supposed, yes, for particular trade, because there is a standard guide on, when you're attending international conferences and all that. But let's return quickly to the former PAMSEC. And I'm glad that you have a book. And thank you for also telling us that there is a guideline, or there was a guideline. But the concerns now will be, one, compliance. Nigerians expect that, like we all agree that it's a huge, 60%, it's huge. So Nigerians expect that the savings, from this, 60%, cut will be judiciously applied, and we will see a difference in terms of, maybe expenditures and all that. But what needs to be done now to ensure, strict compliance? It's just a directive. I had asked whether the president would have come out with an executive order.
Yes. Some Nigerians have said that this should be an executive order and not just, a press release or statement from the presidency.
I think we like putting tags to certain actions. In reality, what the president has done should have even been done at the level of SGF, just by way of circular. That's the way it's supposed to be done. But I believe the president did it to be able to put his own weight. And you remember what the president has done is to actually specify the limit of those who will be going with him, the vice president, and the first lady. Yeah. Meaning that the other people have to go below that. So we must commend him for that. And having done that now, it's now imperative on the office of the SGF to now go down the line. Each time we are talking about this, even when we talk about the 60%, and let me actually modify what you said. You said savings. Savings for what? From where did we start? We don't even know what the base level was. The base level was not the basis of doing the budget. Precisely. So you can't even talk about saving. This was an aberration of people coming in and feeling that, yes, it's our government, and everybody jumped on the fray, and there was no control system of the accounting officers, and also at the central level, the center of government. The center of government is a concept that we use to describe what really holds the government together. And in this case, the bureaucratic center of government is SGF, the head of the civil service, the COSP. Those three are very crucial, but the SGF is the fulcrum. That is why you have 6 permanent secretaries there. And you remember when I was making the statement about the number, even in the Independence Day lecture, about the number of appointees, I was going against what my book prescribed. Professor Okey here said it. My book prescribed 18 and also specify how it can be distributed among the geopolitical zones. But then here we have a president who has appointed about 48, and I was defending. I was defending because we knew when we tried to practice the reduction to 18, 19 before under Yaradua, they were fighting among themselves, and there was actually, governance was actually suffering, and it had to be removing them. So bureaucratic, we want to creep their space, the bureaucracy, and then the ministers. Even in this last regime, you remember how we started transportation, and somewhere along the line, somebody took aviation out of it, So I said, okay, at least the president this time is giving everybody something to do. And that's why I also said that the salary is not really the problem. It is the paraphernalia of office. And then what Nigeria call the shua that happens under the table. Because really, when you look at what has happened, Nigeria and the president should be grateful for what has happened in the last 2 months. The COP28 opened Nigerians' eyes to the way government actually spend money and, without really caring for the other people. I was leader of Nigerian delegation in 1997 to COP3. We were only 4, and we made impact. In this case, even though the scope has expanded to economy, to all the kind of issues, there is no basis for Nigeria having more than 50 overall. And then you now go to the paraphernalia you're talking about. It's not just the number. Have we ever even cared to wonder the cost of those vehicles? The pilot vehicle alone is over 40 million. And the Land Cruiser, I'm told, is about 120 million. The Lexus is 160.
All bulletproof.
Yes, no, even without the bulletproof.
Okay.
This is what you are giving to people who are earning less than 1 million naira. The hood does not make the monk. I mean, the way government is displaying this thing is giving a wrong impression, which is what my brother here was saying, to the Nigerian public, that governance is about ostentatious living. That is not. We need to, first of all, bring that back and take it out. It is not just about, cutting that cost. And then you also remember the so-called Orange Committee report has become a metaphor for government inaction. It was submitted 12 years ago. And yet we are still romanticizing the report. So a lot have to be done. That's why I'm saying the president is lucky this time that these two things have happened. That is this saga of the young lady and then the cop.
Yeah.
So because Nigerians are now awake, my sister there was talking about the ratio of budget, the capital
And
And the current.
exactly. In my book, I itemized, I identified 11 channels where they abuse the recurrent budget. But this is even capital. You are talking about having a percentage to education to this, but the percentage to poverty alleviation for the poor is the one that is being filtered, that we're seeing how it's happening. So it's a jeopardy. And meanwhile, we need to remember that the budget we're operating right now is actually deficit budget, which means we are borrowing. In other words, we are spending the future of our children and ourselves to run a budget. And yet people are doing it this way.
Dr. Adegore,
So the president is already...
I want to still ask you a question. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday when I got this topic, and the person was saying that it's not possible to completely cut down the cost of travel, because he gave me, I itemized something. He said when the president is traveling, he has the chief protocol, the CSO, the ADC, the chief detail, the TACI team, which is made of at least 7 people, the NIA representative, at least 3 personnel. Also, there's chief personal security officer, CPSO, and 3 others, all policemen.
including
the PA, the
that's
SA,
why I said,
so it's not just talking about it. How will this particular, because it's almost 20 now. You're not talking of the SA, the PA, the SA, or all the routine of
sorry,
yes,
that's why I said,
yes,
being with Action Aid, you give us an idea, of
well,
what
he has
forms-
been in service, he has been part of it.
we'll
That's
come
why I
back
want
to
him
it.
to respond to it.
That is not the delegation the president is talking about.
Okay.
Those ones are the standard
Okay, so we want to
kitchen
get
members
clarification
that
here
go.
now.
Any
Yes.
president in the world have those. Whether it is Kenya or America and so on. That is part of the paraphernalia
security
of the
detail.
office
Okay.
of the president.
Yes.
That one has to be maintained. I mean, the presidential fleet alone, the number of people have to be there.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that one is different. But we're talking about these other people
Yes.
that will go beyond what is in the book about duty tour, which says that you go by road. I will not be chartering plane. We are talking about situations whereby the vehicles that were bought last time, we didn't have it in the register for us to be able to give to the other people. Many of them went away with it. I mean, a nation cannot be run that way.
Dr. Adegore, thank you. Aja, you will give us the character of the entourage, those that are supposed to accompany the president when he's making especially international travels. But
And
Prof,
the ESTA code involved, because almost everything is paid for already, budgeted for and paid for. Then the ESTA code that comes with it, practically, it's not paying for anything. It's for them to have a shopping spree.
Professor Ikechukwu,
Yes, we'll bring it.
now Dr. Adegore says the expected savings is indeterminate because we don't even know the base for arriving at the 60% cut. But Nigerians are saying there should be a reduction in the cost of governance, and there are different areas that Nigerians are looking at that could make more impact. I'm just wondering how this aligns with that call for financial prudence, in governance.
Simple. Doc here said he was head of a delegation. I was head of the 2004 Nigerian delegation to the New York Film Festival. I was head of delegation and the only person from government. I was head of Nigerian delegation to the Sitengi Film Festival. You know Nollywood, that's where you should even have 3 million people on that trip.
Yes.
I was alone with the PAMSEC. So that's it. Now go back to government.
Was it a deliberate policy decision? Or
Deliberate policy
you didn't
decision
have the finances?
because of the minister I was working with, Chukwuemeka Chikelu. To become his essay, he had been minister for 7 months before he invited me to be essay. I said, why don't you have an essay for 7 months? Are you serious? He said, I won't have an essay except I find somebody who, if I'm not around, nobody will know there's no minister. Now, Chikelu sat down and said, listen, he removed his cap and kept on the table. He said, okay, this is not chief, this is not this, Mecca talking to you. You're not doc here, okay? If 2 of us are running a business, how would we spend our money? That's how I want us to work here. So, no contracts, etc. Now, that was the template we took off with. The minister lived in his house throughout the period he was minister. Drove his own car. I had no official car, say. When I worked in the other ministry, I had an official car. It was the government that provided the house. I agreed with him on those terms. They didn't pay the rent, etc. Then within that time, there was monetization policy, which means if Dr. Degoro is a minister, instead of us housing him, we give him, I think, 4 million at that time. Everything, he handles his costs. Today, that policy is in place. He gets that money, we still house him. That's what President Tinubu should look into. Because with that policy, then it meant that officials should no longer have drivers. So all the drivers were laid off. Today, each ministry has 3 times the number of drivers, and the policy is still on. The people who shouldn't have official cars have official cars. For us to sell the vehicles, after laying off the drivers in the ministry, again, the minister called me. He said, okay, 2 of us can go into Coscharis and buy a car. Just go there, drive out with a car. Here are people, and I completed the sentence, who are not likely to have a car in their life. So I'm sure it is about this sale of cars. He said yes. He said, listen, we're here to serve God, human beings, serve God through human beings. How do we get the drivers who are going to be laid off to be the ones who will buy these vehicles? But they had more drivers than vehicles, so those who were more were paid. That was the only ministry. My colleagues who were essays in other ministries, some bought 3 cars because of a big boys game. Now, monetization policy should be revisited. The recommendations of the Orosanye report should be revisited.
Should be revisited. How? Please give us context.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, there's a law that says Claire Onoha is now appointed.
Adelabu Abdulrazak.
Yes, can you imagine? My apologies. She was my student in the university, and that's how I knew her. And he keeps flipping. My sincere apologies.
Yeah.
You've been appointed a minister.
Amen.
And yes, and so, as a minister, find your house. You have the money for it. Now, that money is part of what you receive as a minister now, but you still don't spend it on housing. And I recall back then in 2002, a colleague of my boss then, who was minister in another place, he ran a 2 million naira telephone bill. You know, it was landline because his nephews and nieces were around, so they will be calling their cousins in the US and making the
And
call.
talk for hours.
They're just chatting as if they're in the kitchen. So, what's the solution? If you, again, I repeat it, if you don't have competent aides, because that money is paid by the minister and they're seeing it. And if you have friends in the ministry, they'll come and tell you, okay, people are about to get you into trouble. Now, the abuses have become what is normal. And you find that government, you see, in every environment where you need to make expenses, you must make a distinction between mandatory and discretionary expenses. Food is mandatory. You can't say that you've made up your mind that for the next 6 months you're not eating, that somebody annoyed you. You must eat. Discretionary expenses will include whether you have ice cream, whether you want to go for suya, yes, whether you want to club in the evening. Now, government has progressively moved to the point where purely my discretionary expenses constitute nearly 80% of the money spent in the name of the people. And so you find that it also expresses itself in the multiplication of agencies. This ministry that's in the news now, I have on 3 different occasions called for the ministry to be scrapped. Humanitarian affairs is an arms-giving ministry. It's consumption-driven. It's not adding to governance. You're giving money to people. The country is struggling for digitization, digital migration of the banking system. That would have been the best opportunity to force everybody online. But you're giving them cash. So the interest is in corruption. Let's be honest about it. This same ministry, when it was created, they had a retreat, the very first retreat, to streamline them. I was one of the people at that retreat. It was held at Nigerian Army Resource Center. All these things I'm saying, I said. And credit to that minister, she sat through the entire retreat. Then the new PAMSEC, I told them, you're walking into a minefield, etc., etc. But to summarize on this, revisit monetization, get hold of Orosanye report, find out. In fact, it would be good if this government would be the one. Because if you have a Land Cruiser, that engine is built for 30 years. If you know how to service it. And what you do is, anyway, but so now somebody uses it for 4 years. In that 4 years, it is 30,000 kilometers. He goes home with it. The next set will take it. And it's facilitated because as we are finishing in the Ministry of Transport, if you recall, Doc, the Obasanjo dissolved his cabinet 2 months before May. And so the place had been done up. So I called my driver, gave him something, then returned the vehicle to the ministry. It was a deputy director that came to see me in the house, guest house where I was staying. He said, Doc, you can't, you return the car. It's not, well, you know you people, you and your Joe boss, you're doing transparency, but you see, you don't really have to return it. We know what to do. For me to go with the car, it was a 406. They could have done it, but there are things you must ask yourself. Can you buy a 406? Yes. Will this fellow always remember that there was this mago 2 of you did? Yes. Would that make it impossible for you to be consistently serious in driving the right values? Yes. Do I need an extra car? No. But this mentality that, oh, there's something free, or there's something I can take because nobody is watching, now dominates public consciousness, particularly public service, so that the disposition to plunder becomes a primary motivation for many people who are holding office today.
Okay, Professor. Okay, thank you so much. You know, for bringing out to the fore some issues like revisiting the monetization policy or Russia report. But we'll take a break. When we return, we'll be coming to Madam Sueba to talk about the framework and the template that the Tinubu administration.
All right, welcome back to the program. Good morning, Nigeria. And quickly, let me bring in Ajia Suweiba to, of course, weigh in on this discussion. You were talking about the, size of the personnel, attached to executives, and of course, who should be on the president's entourage. What are the defining, qualities or indicators that should qualify one to be part of the trip?
Okay, so in the first place, let me say that I have not served in that kind of flamboyant situation to understand the protocol.
I like that word, flamboyant.
Because this is like an incentive. Yeah. But I think, like PAMSEC said, there are normal protocol arrangements that every president, has. But I want to argue that even this one can be reviewed, because Rwanda did that. They look at what is needed. What do I actually need as an office, apart from the aid in terms of those who take care of health, those who really provide the technical services. Because if you are traveling, you require, first of all, we need to understand what is the purpose of the journey. So I'm putting the international perspective now.
Purpose.
Okay, so purpose of the trip, who is involved in that particular theme or thematic area. Okay. Which ministry is responsible? Who has the responsibility of implementation? Because every trip that we are making involves some certain decision making. Who is supposed to make a decision? Is the president going to be there himself? Is he going to be? Is he being represented? In that case, delegation. Whatever is going to happen there, everybody who is going to place there will go into this framework to say, what is the person doing there? And why is the person, is necessary for the person to go. So you play, and then what budget exists? As part of our budgeting process, planning is the most important thing. If we plan well from the beginning of the year, before we go to develop the budget, because what I realized that most of our budgeting process is like cut and paste. Just increase 50% or 5%, and then from what happened the year before. So there's no review of the current situation in line of the context. If we had done planning, proper planning, we should understand, okay, we know that we have COP28 coming up. What are the issues that are going to be discussed? Who do I need to support me as a representative of a country? We don't need to carry consultants there. The consultation and the preparation needs to happen back in country, so that all the technical preparation is done for the people who are going to be there to represent the country. Going to the place, there are protocols who make arrangement for the journey, the logistics support and everything. That one government understands better. But along the line of that is the understanding of the fact that it is a responsibility, not a pleasure. So by the time we put those and understand the purpose of the journey, the implementation at that meeting, what is going to be happening, what is expected of Nigeria. Because every meeting you go there are actions that are going to be taken, either by the joint, it's going to be a joint decision of countries, and in that case we require those in our own country who understands that particular area and can advise the president better.
How does the size of the personnel staff push up, travel size?
So that is what I'm saying now. Those other people that are not important in that particular issue shouldn't be there. If a president is traveling, I think if there's a need for maybe a cook, I don't know, there's maybe the cook who cooks the person's president.
On a special diet.
On a special
diet.
And then if the person has the personal assistant that is supporting him or her on that particular schedule. Because the personal assistants that the president appoints depends on I think they appoint them on a particular the sector. So that particular sector that is involved will be part of that trip. And then when they go there, they are supporting the president to make that decision that he's supposed to take. And then they are also supporting the president to make a decision in the implementation back into the country and in the reporting of what happened in that place. So there's a press crew, there's those who support in the technical bit, and then there is those who support in the logistics, that is personal. Where we usually have the lacuna is around that personal, where we carry people as an incentive. A friend of a friend, in fact, somebody's relative will find an opportunity to travel to US if the governor's wife is going on a meeting in US.
And that's where you see yes. on the social media platforms, you see everybody, with I am here.
Exactly.
I have arrived.
Sometimes I don't even know where my camera is. So if we put a framework,
yes.
There's no standard, it says a specific framework, but it depends on the context. What is there, what is going to happen. So if we do adequate planning based on accountability, everybody who goes there should come back and report based on what their responsibility. What decision is going to happen? How are you helping the president or the person who is going there to come back and implement, or department? You come back and implement. But unfortunately, even the frontline people who implement are left out.
Okay.
Let's bring in Ahmed Sajo here. You've been nodding to what other guests are talking about, and some people are also advocating that it should extend to the subnational.
Yeah, let me tell you that I'll give you some personal experiences that can illustrate some of these things that we're doing that are unnecessary. But first, let me tell you that she has raised a very fundamental issue that we should look into. What is the result of all these trips? The result matters. And I do remember that when the current Chinese president, Xi Jinping, was in charge of municipal administration as a high-ranking member of the Politburo then, he said any government official that has to put up a banner to announce his achievement should be removed. because you don't have to announce your achievement. Let the people that you have served, show the achievement by the impact on them. We're talking about 133 people in multidimensional poverty,
yes.
It's beyond just lack of access to education, health, and some people do not have even access to toilet. That's how bad it is. But you're talking about, a ministry of handout that just increases dependence on and enhances incapacity
because
to go out.
State governors with
Wait,
6,000
I'm just coming.
aides.
I'm
Yes.
coming. So this is where we are. Now, my experience is that, when I was active in the Northeast, we went on a trip, to discuss issues around the insurgency with then Governor Kashim as our lead. We went on that trip. He did not have one person, one aide with him. And when we were going from location to location, and some of them university campuses, to interface with academics, I asked him, why are you not with your aides? And he said, look, we've come here for a very serious business. What are they going to contribute? Because the discussions we are holding here are academic, are high level.
And confidential.
Exactly, that kind of a thing. So what I'm saying is that you do not have to carry all this excess luggage. And don't forget, all these policemen that we have assigned to follow people are losing touch with policing proper. So when they leave the VIP duties, they go back to the division. They don't even know how to coordinate activity, and that's why we have increased insecurity. But that is one thing. I was on the former president's delegation to Portugal, and what I noticed was that our president and the Portuguese president were to come and speak at the same location. 4 sets of people came to sweep our president's seat. Nobody came to sweep the Portuguese president's seat. And I'm telling you, and here in Nigeria, I've witnessed foreign presidents, participate in functions with our own president. I have not seen their people come and harass everybody, sweep their seat. So there are certain activities we must begin to develop. We have NIA officials all over the world. Why can't they take charge of certain activities regarding the safety of our president in their locations? So what I am trying to say is that, do we really put real value to some of these trips?
Okay, that's not a question for us to answer.
No, I'm just saying.
That's a rhetorical question.
Do we have real value for some of these trips? If we have this real value, how does those values translate to benefits for our people when we go and come back?
That calls for another edition of Good Morning Nigeria. But for now, Dr. Degoro, I like you. I mean, obviously, what drives people to scramble, to be on, travel lists, especially where it has to do with foreign trips, is the craze for ESTA codes. And that's basically because ESTA codes are paid in foreign currency. I'm just wondering, if we de-emphasize, craze for ESTA codes and, strengthen the value of our Naira and pay ESTA codes in Naira, will it help to shoot down I don't know.
Yes, because when you are paid extra code, everything you eat and drink has been paid for already. So what's the use of the extra code?
Everybody wants the dollar.
The dollar.
That is the thing. I want to go, and you save, and you're not saving now. You are hoarding it.
Yes, you are hoarding the dollar.
Yes, you hoard the Naira, the dollar. So if we de-emphasize that, is that one way to?
Obviously, that's a very dangerous way that you're suggesting. Because you pay somebody in Naira, And then he gets there, he found out that he
No,
cannot even pay.
No, she's talking
Okay.
about the
No.
dollars.
Yeah.
Yes, you see,
Okay.
if our naira has value,
But the naira doesn't
And
have value right now.
you take care of.
Okay.
No, that's what I'm saying. If we shore up the value of the naira,
Yes.
and people know that,
Like you're giving
when
in naira, you
travel-
have to go and buy the dollars
Yes,
in naira.
Yes.
even
You
if you are doing
understand,
that,
yes.
even if you are doing that,
Yes.
you are still going to give the equivalent or what will enable them to live over there. Let me tell you also. Let me also let you know that for honest civil servants who they made the Estaco thing helped me to pay my students' school fees. Because you gave me the Estaco at that time, it used to be about $200. I know all those places in the Success Garden where you pay just £50. And then I will make sure that I will eat more than £10 a day. And then I will save that. So that is one way. But the key issue is that your relevance, the fact that you are relevant to that thing. There is a circular as far back as 1991 under Babangida that even specified that when you're going for those meetings, that should be interministerial meetings. We need to articulate Nigerian positions. When you come back, you need to write a report. We need to say how we can integrate it. Those things are there, and we know. So technically speaking, it's just shall I say the malaise of the present day.
The compliance is new.
Yeah, no.
And it's been there over the years.
Yes,
Implementation.
It's the malaise of the current age, where everybody want to pose that I'm close to the governor, I'm close to this, I'm traveling with them, and so on. And it's not just that alone. If you read my book, it's even in the training. I told the director of RIPA, Elizabeth, that you are ripping Nigeria off. Because, when I was at the bureau, I had to go there and I said, I have a list of Nigerians who have attended your course. I need to see their performance so that I can use it to be able to tell at home that these are the people.
There was nothing.
She confessed to me that many of them will just register and then go away. But then when I asked for the report, everybody got satisfactory. Everybody got satisfactory, including those who will just register and go away. We had, over a 8-year period, and that's why we then instituted a process whereby you bring, some Nigerians in diaspora with our own people here to facilitate and train them in-house. So the things that we're talking about, these issues of cutting costs and so on. Let me also say here, in closing, to say, as I said before, that what has happened in the last 2 months we actually strengthened the hands of the president to take certain actions. We also need to remember, as a Christian, we listen to what the wife of the president, the first lady, said, on the altar, on the day of swearing in, that God has blessed us. We don't need Nigerian government money.
Yes.
We can use that as a basis to also transfer that to even the ministers. Who is appointed minister now who doesn't have a car in his own house? Why don't we, like Oke said, we go back and revisit monetization? Everything that monetization did, I was with the SGF in 2003, we've turned it over. The things that monetization gives to you, you also still pay it from government, including newspaper, and even paying your...
I'm sorry, we have to interject here because we're running out of time and we want our two other guests to also contribute. But Jume, the spokesperson for the president said that regardless of whether there was an executive order or not, that anyone who decides not to comply with the directive does so at his or her own
cost.
peril.
Or maybe at our own
peril,
cost.
to use his words, peril. And that's because Mr. President, we know, I mean, from his antecedents, he's an action man.
Yes.
Once he has said, twice he has spoken.
And Nigerians now taking the president serious when he talks. I believe they believe that when President Tinubu says something, he comes through with it. Let's have your final thoughts.
The day he was sworn in,
yes,
he announced that the subsidy was off. A few days later, the naira was floated. So I don't imagine that somebody in a position like that will say what he doesn't mean. Where the problem appears to arise from is that some of the decisions have had unpalatable effects. And many people in reacting forget that the purpose of the decision was not to make them suffer. It was an anticipation that it will have something to deliver. Because even those painful decisions, they're also exactly the same decisions his opponents would have taken. If you remember, all of them were planning to remove subsidy, to flow the naira, etc. That's on one side. Secondly, looking at the one of this thing, let's also look at it. Do you suppose that Tinubu saw the entire list of those going to him. You remember the scandalous trip to Lagos? He couldn't have known.
Yes.
That's what usually happens. And that's why you need powerful, insightful strategists who understand the system as your aides.
But who draws the protocol?
No. The point, will they show it to you? I came on a job with a minister, and the first thing was his office door led through the registry. I said, so Honorable Minister, I can't be passing through the registry. Here is your visitor's room. Here is the registry. Your movement is too predictable. So let's put another door through that passage. And we checked, there was no load bearing. This was 2004. The civil servant brought a bill of 721,000 for the door. This was 2004. So I called him, I sat him down. I said, listen, we are new here. We are not quarreling with the creative thing you want to do with this, but it's on the name of my boss. Anyway, to cut it short, the door was installed for 49,000. So here you have it. Oh yes, now all of this needs to be put in context. Cost of governance, cost of public administration actually, because governance refers to principles, has to do with insisting on mandatory costs only. On ministers, focusing on anything that doesn't need to be spent on shouldn't be spent on. I'm sorry I keep going back to Chikelu. He will tell you, if there's an event we need to have, young man. Thank you. That's the other point. Chikelu became minister between 36 and 38.
Yes.
Impeccable record, no files were delayed. Like I said, he used his car. He made sure those who worked with him. It was exciting to work with somebody who believed in what he was doing.
Just as a final note, what do we do now to effect strict compliance, unlike what used to happen?
Hit whoever misbehaves.
That is...
He has said it. But let's have your final thoughts.
Yes.
What do you really
Following on what he just said, let's do a thorough course of administrative audit. I see that the president wants to take action. Audit all the processes and remove the excesses. Excess logistics that is uncalled for. Where is those aids that are unnecessary? Are we spending much more than we need? What is the actual need of a particular area? Look at the many ministries that we have. What is happening there? Decentralize this action to the states and local governments. We have the joint treasury, but I think there needs to go further. The satellites for the president on the accountability system should touch on all the other MTAs. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there.
On a final note, actions should have consequences. People commit offenses and you never hear about it, and nobody takes responsibility. If anything goes wrong, somebody should be made to pay. Then others will avoid it.
Dr. Goke, 30
My
seconds.
final note is that the president must take ownership of his own bureaucracy. He needs to look into the public service leadership of the permanent secretaries and screen them for integrity, because it is the integrity of those people that will enable them to be able to confront their ministers who are doing any kind of shua and excess.
Okay.
2 seconds.
10 seconds. Is it true that most permanent secretaries were former directors of finance? And they claim that it enabled them leverage themselves to become permanent secretaries. These are issues that must be addressed.
Exactly, Professor Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development, Specs Academy. Thank you so much for your contribution. As always, we are deeply appreciate it. Dr. Goke Adegroye, former Permanent Secretary and Pioneer DG and former Permanent Secretary, Bureau of Public Service Reforms. Thank you so much, and I hope we'll be able to get your book so that we can go through it and get more enlightenment on that. Honorable Ahmed Sajo, former Commissioner for Information and Strategy at Adamawa State University, we appreciate you. And Madam Sueba Mohammed Nkabo, Deputy Country Director and Director of Programs Action Aid Nigeria. It's our immense pleasure to have you in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Foreign news is next.
Niger's military tribunal has granted provisional release to Mohamed Bazoum Salam, the 23-year-old son of ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, from house arrest in the capital, Niamey. Salem had been under detention at the presidential residence along with his parents since the military coup that ousted his father in July. The coup, one of 8 in West and Central Africa since 2020, faced widespread condemnation, resulting in sanctions from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The international community also called for the release of Bazoum and a return to democratic rule. The military tribunal, however, did not disclose the fate of Salem's parents in its statement. The family, according to Bazoum's political party and relatives, has endured challenging conditions, lacking access to running water and electricity. Furthermore, their lawyer claimed that they had been denied the opportunity to meet with a magistrate and had not been informed about any legal proceedings against them. In Ecuador, hundreds of soldiers have been patrolling near deserted streets in the country's capital after the government and drug mafias declared war on each other, leaving residents gripped with fear. The South American country has been plunged into crisis after years of growing control by transnational cartels who use its ports to ship cocaine to the United States and Europe. President Daniel Noboa had given orders to neutralize criminal gangs after gunmen stormed and opened fire in a TV studio and bandits threatened random executions of civilians and security forces. Less than 2 months after taking office, he declared the country in a state of internal armed conflict. The crime gangs also declared war on the government when Noboa announced a state of emergency following the prison escape on Sunday of one of Ecuador's most powerful narco boss.
All right, and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Once again, we do appreciate all of you, wherever you watch us from today. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll be here again with another topic for discussion. On behalf of all the guests and the production crew, I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
And I'm Jumoisu. Thanks for watching. Stay on high with Good Morning Nigeria every morning. Bye.